Often at this time of year, my thoughts take me back many, many years to the magical time I spent living in an ancient 1,000-year-old monastery in Hungary. The daily routine of prayer, the incredible knowledge and wisdom of the old monks, the treasures of scientific and historical and artistic and spiritual genius, the stories and experiences shared during my daily visits to the room of each of the monks, the magnificence of the hilly landscape and the centuries of art surrounding me, the world-famous Baroque library, and the priceless medieval documents of the archives. All this was a world unto itself, a unique universe apart from the rest of the world, yet somehow mystically reflecting and preserving the entire world of humanity. Between these ancient walls was for us the world, and we needed no other. Outside, hideous cold Soviet tanks were occupying the country, brutally stifling human endeavor. But inside, the amazing world of spirit and intellect flourished as it always had. Inside, the human spirit soared. It was an oasis of inner peace in the midst of a world ravaged by wars, both hot and cold. Life in a monastery is not a life divorced from the world. Life in a monastery is the world. In this sacred microcosm of the universe, sublime idealism flourished hand in hand with down-to-earth realism. Every aspect of human existence was embraced and seen for what it is. And that includes the one aspect that most of modern humanity shuns, the ever-present reality of death. Most of us, particularly in this country, do not like to think of death, and we prefer to pretend that it does not exist, even though it is, of course, the only thing that does exist for every person born. The one and only thing in life that is not optional. Maybe that is why so many seem to be absolutely shocked when it visits their own family or comes knocking at their own door. Not so in a monastery. There, death is a part of life, and a beautiful part of life. Many were the times I sat at the bedside of people in their final days and hours, holding their hand as they looked with joy into the world to come. Many were the times mine was the last voice they heard this side of heaven, mine the last kiss they received as they passed eagerly from this life to the next. Mine the hands that closed the eyes that were now seeing more clearly than ever before. Many were the times we gathered together to carry the body of a friend to that fascinating place of written names and dates and unwritten memories, as we placed the spirit into the eternal hands for which we had all been born. No, death and life for us were intimately connected, two aspects of the one eternal moment. In the ancient cloister walkway of that venerable old place, where I used to walk every evening in quiet meditation, there stands an ancient sundial. Now maybe you have never seen a sundial. There are not too many of them around here. A sundial is the ancestor of the clock. The numerals are positioned in such a way that a precisely placed pointer casts a shadow over the correct one, marking the changing hour of day. Surrounded by these numbers, these hours, stands a Latin inscription, Una vestrum ultima mea, One of you will be my last. One of you hours will be my last. It was a sobering reality check, shockingly blunt perhaps for the modern ostriches burying their human heads in the sand, yet not at all frightening for those in touch with the reality that this tiny stage of life we call earthly existence is by definition limited, finite, incomplete. After a while, after years of meeting this remarkable sundial like an old friend, its startling message not only lost its startlingness, but somehow began to fill me with real peace. This sundial had seen generations, centuries of human beings to whom it had delivered its shocking and unchanging message. Each of those generations, each of those centuries, each of those human beings passed before the sundial and passed out of time. And for each, without exception, its prophecy was fulfilled. One of those hours was the last. Why do we fear those numbers? Why do we fear that hour that will be our last? It is for that hour that we were born. It is only that hour that announces to us that we are at last finished with the numbers, have no more use for the hours, but are already ready to burst forth into the fullness of life, into a world without hours, without minutes, a life not bound by the chains of time. A life where numbers and hours and sundials and fears have no meaning. A life of those who can no longer die, for they are like angels. A life in the God of the living, to whom all are truly alive. I have not seen that sundial, or for that matter, any other sundial, for a very long time. But every time I look into the face of a clock, or see the changing numbers on the screen of my telephone as I check the time of day, I remember that old friend, that old prophet, that old sundial of long ago. And I just smile knowingly at those cold numbers staring at me as I remember peacefully, one of you will be my last. Then begins the real life.